for our next keynote, accelerating progress towards the UN Sustainable Development Goals. A lot to get through here, and we are welcoming back a guest to the stage, and that is David Latten, Head of Global Indirect Procurement and Supplier Diversity and Equality at Logitech. Hi David, great to see you again. And who gave that job title so many words? That was quite a challenge. My also cue just kept on going on and on there. Anyway, you know the drill, sir. I'll leave the stage to you, and I'll have a Q&A at the end.
Thank you. That was actually me. I should have stuck to indirect procurement. But no, thank you. Great to be here. Have you ever asked yourself what sort of world you want to leave to the next generation? How do you think we are doing in achieving that vision? Have you ever asked your kids what sort of future they want to live in? This is exactly the question I asked my kids this week, and this is what they said to me. Our 5-year-old, our youngest and bravest child, piped up first and asked for a future where there's a racetrack that goes around the whole world. A really cool idea, but perhaps not exactly on topic for today. Secondly, our 9-year-old said he wanted a safe environment with no oil. And lastly, our 7-year-old asked for a world where you are free to choose who you want to be. Back in September 2015, the United Nations launched the Sustainable Development Goals, aiming for society to achieve exactly these sort of bold goals, although sadly maybe not the racetrack around the world. The 17 United Nations Sustainable Development Goals are a shared blueprint for peace and prosperity for people and the planet. They provide an urgent call for action by all countries in a global partnership. Launched in 2015, the Global Goals are the result of a 3-year consultation with input of over 10 million people around the world to create the 17 global goals you see here. And perhaps most importantly of all, approximately 75% of participants were under 30 years of age. The global goals are a blueprint for their future. Ban Ki-moon, the UN Secretary General at the time, went on to say, "The goals are an agenda for shared prosperity, peace and partnership that conveys the urgency of climate action and is rooted in gender equality and respect for the rights of all. And above all, it pledges to leave no one behind." He went on to say, "The true test will be implementation. We need action from everyone, everywhere. They are a to-do list for people and planet and a blueprint for our success." The global goals were created over 7 years ago now, and we are halfway to the 2030 goal deadline. So what has happened since? Well, we've certainly talked a lot about the goals. In any given month, there's over 1 million social media posts around the UN SDGs. And on International Women's Day in 2023, there were 2.5 million posts on that day alone. What the world really needs is action, but awareness of the global goals and related issues is important. Before we can even think about achieving the goals, society more broadly needs to know about them. We need action from everyone, everywhere, as Ban Ki-moon said back in 2015. And yet, recent research from the World Economic Forum suggests that only 25% of global society are even aware of the goals. So speaking out is important, but ultimately we need action. It is now half-time on the global goals. So where are we and how are we doing? Well, seeing as we're dealing with the UN, this isn't as easy as you'd hope. It's a simple and powerful question, but it's also very difficult to answer. From the 17 goals, there are 169 related targets and more than 230 associated indicators. One possible answer comes from the Social Progress Index, created back in 2011 by the Social Progress Imperative, and this offers one way to measure our progress. It looks different to the SDGs, but essentially it measures the same goals, and it allows us to track our progress since 2011. If you think of Maslow's hierarchy from your business school days, it's essentially that idea, just with the SDGs. For starters, the most basic human needs of shelter, personal safety and nutrition, then the foundations of well-being, access to basic knowledge and information, and finally the most aspirational measures of personal freedom, choice and access to advanced education. So how has society fared? How have governments, NGOs, civil sector and corporations fared at delivering the sustainable future the next generation is asking for? Let's have a look at some of the results. The scale runs from 0 to 100, with 100 being that we've achieved the SDGs. Luckily, we didn't start at 0. In 2015, we were there at 62. Roll forward to 2018, slight progress to 63, and then most recently of all, 2022, we're at 65. The world is becoming a fairer, more equitable and sustainable place, but far, far too slowly. And the best estimate today is that in 2030, we'll have achieved 75 on the index. Or to be clear, in plain English, society will not achieve the global goals by 2030. Not even close. The best estimate is that we will achieve these goals until 2094. As bad as this sounds, hidden in the aggregate data is an even more disturbing finding. The Opportunity Index that I mentioned earlier of personal rights, freedom, access to advanced education and inclusion, supporting the SDGs shown here, is the most aspirational of the metrics to achieve a more equitable world by 2030. Where are we today? Well, as a global society, we're flatlining. Opportunity is no more equitable today across the globe than it was in 2015. How are industrialised countries performing? Well, as you might expect, back in 2015, they were performing quite well on this metric. So what has happened since? The EU and Canada are flatlining. There's been no progress. The UK and the US has even gone backwards. The American dream is available to less people today than it was over a decade ago, back in 2011. We are living in a social progress recession. All of us in this room today can do something about this. We are procurement. We are in the opportunity business. So let's fast forward to 2023. We're at the half-time stage of the global goals. Let's hear from the current UN Secretary General and notice how his language has changed from aspiration to desperation. He goes on to say, we must rise higher to rescue the goals and stay true to our promise of a world of peace, dignity, and prosperity on a healthy planet. For a world in crisis, rescuing the global goals must be our highest common priority. Corporations need to improve to make every dollar count. We have no alternative but to keep pushing our limits and stepping up our efforts. So what can corporations do? What can all of us in this room do about this? What does society even expect from corporations and procurement? Let's find out. Some answers to these questions can be found in the Edelman Trust Barometer. It's an online survey of over 32,000 respondents across 28 countries, and it represents an annual gauge of the international population's trust in business, government, the media, and other organisations. So, first question, does society want corporations to act on these really important topics? Or are we already overstepping? Let's find out. Well, the first answer, it's very clear that few in society see business as overstepping. But should we be doing more? The short answer is yes. There's a very strong message that society wants to see more action from business. And this is as true on social and inequality issues as much as it is on climate change. The next piece of research is about our own workforce. The report goes on to say that 7 out of 10 employees want their job to include a greater purpose and bring societal impact. In today's fragile economy, with so much uncertainty around engaging with your talent and topics such as hybrid working, this research provides a really powerful message to create an empowered and fulfilled team. This is no more true than it is in procurement. We have the dollars to really make an impact towards these topics. The report goes on to look at competence and ethics. How do various institutions score on this framework? You'll see some of the institutions there on the screen at the moment. The truth is, society believes that business is the only competent and ethical organisation that can act on these topics. And the final data from this report on trust. Which institutions are trusted to act on these topics? And again, business is the only trusted institution to act. So what's the story here? Society wants business to do more. They trust us and see us the only competent and ethical institution that can do more. This is a huge opportunity for action, and it's exciting. And there's a huge risk for inaction. Society wants corporations to do more on these really big topics. And if we do more, our consumers and our workforce will reward us for these actions. There is a good business drive of action as much as there is the obvious ethical one. And finally, the report concludes with guidance for corporations in today's uncertain world. 1. Businesses must continue to lead, not just from a risk management perspective, but from an aspirational do more good perspective too. Secondly, collaboration is essential, not just across business, but also with governments and NGOs to create scale of impact needed at the speed of impact needed. Even in the face of such an uncertain economy, we must address societal issues that align to our company's mission and values. Where can we make the most impact and give our people societal impact through their work? And lastly, be an advocate for truth and hold information sources and each other accountable. The report closes by saying, to succeed in the decade ahead, we need to move global corporations from reporting to rallying, to move beyond the inside game of annual ESG reports to an outside game that excites stakeholders about the possibility of economic growth with positive societal impact. And now, for more on the importance of corporations to act on these topics and the great work that the World Benchmarking Alliance is doing to make sure that corporations do act, it is my pleasure to share a video from Samantha at the World Benchmarking Association.
Hello, my name is Samantha Ndiwalana, and I am delighted to be speaking with you all today. Sustainability challenges have become a global talking point. Every day, it is estimated around 21,000 people die due to inequality, and by 2050, 1.2 billion people are projected to be displaced by the climate crisis. To achieve a sustainable future that works for everyone, we urgently need to set the world on a fairer, more sustainable path. It is particularly important that the solution works for everyone, as around 2/3 of working employees are women. The World Benchmarking Alliance was founded as a non-profit, and our mission is to identify, assess, and influence the world's most influential companies to hold them to account for their role in achieving the Sustainable Development Goals. We do this by publishing free and publicly available benchmarks on their performance. In this way, we set out what good company performance looks like, so that leading companies can keep it up and the laggards can catch up. This creates a race to the top, and we also set out what influential business leaders, such as yourselves, need to do to help set the world onto a more resilient future. We harness the competitive nature of companies so that you can create impact. Last year, our digital inclusion benchmark included a core social indicator assessment. While Logitech, like many other companies, still has some way to go in this area, our results show that they're heading in the right direction, with female board representation around 30%, and the company going as far as to detail the number of women it employs in technical roles. However, if companies are really wanting to make an impact in this area, then they need to become more explicit about how their work impacts women and what they are doing to address these impacts. Following SDG 17, Partnership for the Global Goals, we prioritize collaboration with organizations such as Gender Fair, leading companies such as Logitech, and influential private sector leaders such as yourselves. We want to come together to create a private sector that looks beyond profit to prioritize people and planet. Join us in working to build a more equitable and sustainable future by using your reach, your power, your influence to change how your company procures. Hello, my name is
So, what does this all mean for procurement? As Samantha rightly says, we must use our reach, our power, our influence to drive how our companies procure and drive progress towards the global goals. Each of us needs to find our something. Where does your company's brand resonate the most? Where can your company's capabilities make the biggest difference? What do you care about most yourself? Which goal for society do you feel you can drive forward? And when you have worked this out, go do it. Prioritise action over words and drive progress towards these aspirational goals. This is exactly the exercise we carried out at Logitech. And the answer to what's my something in my role at Logitech is the work we're carrying out with a great organisation called Gender Fair. One of our core values at Logitech is equality, and this needs to be reflected in our supply base. Our traditional answer, and the traditional answer from a lot of companies around that, is supplier diversity. But across corporate spending, only 6% of corporate spend in the US is with diverse-owned suppliers. What about the other 94%? We need an equality lens for the other 94%. Just think about your own spend and what impact you can have with that 94% of your spend. It's up to us in this room to deliver progress towards the global goals via our influence, our spend. And Logitech's work with Gender Fair is our answer to mobilise this 94% of our spend for gender equality. Gender Fair was founded back in 2016, where they defined and advanced a standard for gender equality aligned with the UN Women Empowerment Principles. The metrics cover leadership, representation, policies, procedures, and some other areas. And they started by assessing large business-to-consumer companies on this metric, answering the simple question, are they gender fair? Are they living up to the Women Empowerment Principles? And you can find the results on their website. For the very good reason that Gender Fair's aim is to mobilise consumer spending as a force for good, a force for gender equality. And now, via our work with Gender Fair, we are looking to make a similar impact on global B2B spend, our corporate procurement. We assess our highest impact suppliers each year for gender equality, and we advocate for them to progress each year. We are putting a gender equality lens on our largest supplier relationships. Our story so far is best summed up by the work carried out by Sir Isaac Newton, a renowned scholar. Now stick with me here, it will become clear where I'm going with this. Newton's first law, the law of inertia, states that an object will not move unless acted upon by a force. The more mass an object has, the more inertia an object has, and the more force is required to move it. Newton's second law states that force equals mass times acceleration. Now, if I apply Newton's second law to our own efforts to move suppliers on gender fairness and equality, you'll begin to see where I'm going with this. The leverage hypothesis is real. We all know this. We have an influence on our suppliers, and they will listen to our requests. But there are limits. Logitech's own ability to force change towards gender and other equity topics is limited by one, our own total mass, our spending influence, the breadth of suppliers we can influence, and the depth of our impact with those suppliers has a limit. Sooner or later, the inertia and friction, supplier resistance, frankly, from those suppliers will overwhelm the impact we have with them. And secondly, we're just one corporation. Our network and our people only spread so far. But if you imagine for a second, all the spending power at today's event, what a huge mass of influence that is. And all the individuals in all of our teams, just imagine the power of all of these people combined. That is how we can force dramatic change quickly as an industry. And that is the founding idea of our coalition for gender fair procurement. Our ultimate goal is to create an industry standard, aspirational metric for gender equality that allows all of us to mobilise all of our spend for gender equality. To do this, we need allies, of course. And if this effort resonates with you and your corporation, by joining us now, you'll be able to exert a great impact on the future direction of the coalition and play a key role in delivering our aim of achieving gender equality as soon as possible. But more broadly than this, essentially for all of us in procurement, to create urgent progress, we need to move from this, a world where I know lots of progressive companies are doing great things, but we're not working together. We're asking lots of different questions. Suppliers are drowned in requests and we can't force change. We need to move to this. All of us working together, using our combined mass, our combined influence to force change quickly. Find which goal for society you feel you can drive the most impact with. And when you've worked this out, find allies to do it with you and go do it. What can we do together today? Only by coming together can we truly make a difference and pass on a fair, just, and environmentally sustainable world to the next generation. We are the first generation that can end poverty. And we're the last generation that can stop the worst impacts of climate change. We just need to do it. Let's take action and work together towards holistic, aspirational goals for people and planet. The future is in procurement's hands. We need to use all of our influence and our spend to deliver dramatic, aspirational progress towards the global goals. Your leaders, your team members, and your consumers will thank you for it. In the words of Antonio Gutierrez, let's make each and every dollar count and rise together to rescue the SDGs. Thank you.
Okay, David, I've just got one quick question for you. That was very powerful stuff, actually. I'm still hanging on your every word there. For you, you used one expression there about controlling the dollars, the power of the dollars. Do you think everyone watching this always fully understands the influence they have on their supplier networks to make an influence and make a difference?
I think we're just beginning to understand that as an industry. My short story on that is I'm actually a blow-in to procurement. I was originally in finance. I came into procurement about 7 or 8 years ago. And the hot topic when I first came into procurement was, how do we get that seat at the table? How do we get C-level people to recognise us? And we were very much kind of talking within ourselves about what we do is impact our suppliers, look for savings, manage risk, etc. And I think what's really exciting now is we've pivoted that to sort of what can we do? There are certain things we do, but what impact can we have by doing that? Why do we do that? And I think we're only just beginning to realise how much power we can have in that space. And again, as an outsider coming in, procurement is one of the coolest, if not the coolest places to be in a business in terms of what you can do. You know, everything that's going on internally, you can influence everything externally. I think we're just beginning to realise that wherever your corporation wants to go, like I said, wherever are the areas that you can impact most, be it on gender, other social issues, environmental issues, there's such massive impact in procurement. We all know about scope 3 around environmental issues. It's a similar logic around equity and social topics too. I think we're just realizing how amazing the power that we can have in those dollars we spend. There are limits, of course, like I said, and I think that's why it's really important that we work together. There's net zero around environment. What other sort of similar aspirational targets do we have around equity? We need to work out that. But as an entity, procurement, and as an industry, we have such power because of it.
Absolutely, a superpower, as you said. David, thank you so much again for your time today. Really enjoyed that. Some inspiring stuff, and I'm sure everyone at home or in the office or wherever they were feels exactly the same. David, thank you ever so much indeed for your time.
Thanks for having me. Goodbye, everyone.
Thank you.